Hi, I'm Christina and today I'm going to be talking about the content that I consumed in September. I currently work in publishing, I'm 24 and I live in London, although I will be in a week. I just want to talk through the books that I read, the TV shows that I watched and any YouTube and podcasts that I'm loving this month. If you do like it, please subscribe, go and watch my other blog, follow me on Instagram, I'm at The Story Book Club, as well as TikTok if you enjoy. So I read two books similarly at the same time. One was a non-fiction book and one was a fiction book. And normally when I read non-fiction, I don't actually like reading non-fiction that much. So I normally have a fiction book on the go as well. And I say my non-fiction book will be my commuter and my fiction will be the book that I read before I go to bed. I'm in a little book club with all my friends. Like, it's all really nice. We get together every month and have wine and snacks and talk about books. Club pick for September was A Bit of a Stretch by Chris Atkins. I don't normally think that I like non-fiction, it normally takes me a while to read it, but I got really into this. It's basically a diary of a man who was in prison. It's written in a diary form, so I think that was the really kind of easy way that I got through it because it was really short little bits. It wasn't light-hearted, but it wasn't really heavy. It was very talkative, very chatty, and felt like you were just reading someone's diary. And it wasn't as if you were being bombarded with loads of facts and figures and everything. It was a very personable read. So that was the book that I kind of started out reading. And I had planned to read An American Marriage by Tayari Jones at the same time. However, this is also a book that's set in prison, but it's a fiction book and it's set in a US prison. The first half of the book is written is in letters. So they were both quite similar. The UK prison in a diary form, non-fiction. You had a US prison in letter forms, fiction. And I was just mixing them up too much. So I had to stop reading An American Marriage and go back to it. And I think because I stopped reading it, I wasn't as into it as I could have been. I really enjoyed the first half of it where it's all written in letters. Basically, a black man is falsely accused of rape and is sent to prison. And he's been married to his wife for a year. So they're very fresh, very newly married. Eventually their marriage kind of diminishes over the course of his prison sentence. And you see this through letters, which I thought was the most interesting thing, because there's always stuff that's missed out in letters. It's not said, but you can read between the lines. So I thought that part of it was really interesting. However, and it says it in the blurb, so no spoiler, he gets out of prison and he goes back to planning to live this life with his wife again, but his wife has moved on. So it's interesting seeing all that because you really feel for both the characters. And I do think me stopping reading the book halfway through did kind of impact my experience of it. I did enjoy it and it's definitely a book that I would recommend, but it wasn't as good as I maybe hoped it to be. So the next book I read after that was The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary. I have been so excited to read this book for ages. I love Beth O'Leary's The Switch and The Flatshare. Both of those books really, I just love them. When The Road Trip came out back in April, I really wanted it, but it was in hardback and that's so expensive. So I figured I'd wait until it came out in paperback. But it was 99p on Kindle. I don't know if it still is. I'd go and check if I was you. And it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. I loved it. And I mean, I read it in 48 hours. So I think that actually shows how good and how kind of immersed in it I was. But in my opinion, it wasn't as good as The Flatshare and The Switch. So basically, the premise of it is a road trip, but you have two exes, Addie and Dylan, who coincidentally have to road trip up to the wedding together. There's a whole cast of characters, there's 5 of them in this car, driving from the south of England up to Scotland, and just the characters and the way they all interact is so fun. And you also have flashbacks to when Addie and Dylan first got together. Those bits were my favourite. They met in Italy, it was hot, it was summer, it was just, those parts of it were my favourite. I did think it was a really good book. All the different storylines, it covered lots of different themes, and the romance between Addie and Dylan was very, they just had such a good connection that I did really enjoy it, and I did fly through it in 48 hours. Coming off the road trip, I really wanted another rom-com read. I loved how quickly I got into that one, and it was when loads of other stuff was going on and I just needed to escape. So I downloaded my first Mary McFarlane book, and that's called Last Night, and I did not expect the tears within the first kind of 50 pages. Essentially, and it's once again in the blurb, you're introduced to this group of friends at a pub quiz night, and you see the different relationships. You see that between the main character and the guy, there's a bit of chemistry, but then his girlfriend comes in and there's just lots of things going on with the main character. Wakes up the next day and her best friend, one of the people in the group, has been killed by a car crash. It had really heavy moments in, and it was really kind of poignant and sad, but even though it was about a really heavy subject, it was still a really good romance. I really liked the main character. I thought she was really interesting. All the different family and romance and all of that stuff. I really enjoyed it. And it's, once again, I think I flew through it in 48 hours. It's just a really nice, fun, but not too lighthearted. Kind of, it had lots of depth to it. The last book that I finished in September was along the same lines of romance books, was The Lucky Escape by Laura Jane Williams. Now, I love Laura Jane Williams. I've followed her on Instagram for years. I love her past books, The Love Square and One Stop. So I was really excited for The Lucky Escape. I actually found it in a charity shop for £2.50, which is just a dream. And I loved it. So you meet the main character Annie on her wedding day, and she's all dressed up, ready, on the way to church, and basically her fiance does not show up. It's her coming to terms with that, coming to terms with their 11-year relationship, and also going on her honeymoon with a new guy, a guy who she knew from childhood, who she's recently bumped into. Part of it was set travelling in Australia with a guy and falling in love with a guy, which kind of relates to my life, so I feel like a part of that. I loved it. In general, just the nuances and the emotional kind of journey that Annie had to go on was really interesting. It was also a really funny book. All the characters had lots of depth to them, which I just really enjoyed it. So I would recommend those three. If you're a fan of a romance book, those three were really good. Easy, but not just a cookie cutter story. And then going on to TV shows that I watched in September. I didn't actually watch any films, I don't think, in September. I was mainly just obsessed with Virgin River. So I don't know if you've watched Virgin River on Netflix, but it's a kind of feel-good romance TV show. I introduced to it because I knew my mum and my sister loved it. And when I was ill with tonsillitis at the end of August, I started watching it, and I flew through the first season so quickly. The first season is that Mel, who is a nurse, has recently, something has gone in her life, and it's not said until halfway through the first season, but she basically turns up at this new town wanting to start over her life. Gets a new job as being the nurse to this town. It's a small town in California. All the characters know each other. There's such tight-knit community. She's an outsider coming in. There's this bar with this really hot guy who owns it. There's the mayor of the town who is really nosy. There's the doctor who she's working for who doesn't want her there. I just love it. It's just the most beautiful scenery. Watching it just makes me feel so calm and cozy, and I feel like it's a really autumnal watch because it's just so pretty and it makes you want to go hiking. It makes you want to go see a river. Yes, season 2 and season 3 for me were as good as season 1. Perhaps they get a bit crazy with their storyline. It's very much one of those shows that's not realistic. But it's a really nice, comforting autumnal watch that I'd really recommend, and I need season 4 to come out soon because the end of season 3 just lots of things. I also watched Sex Education season 3. I loved Sex Education season 1 and 2, and for me the third season definitely lived up to it. I loved it as much as I loved the other season. I know lots of people ship like Ruby and Otis, but my heart sticks with Otis and Maeve. And I love the character Adam. He was my favourite, and oh my gosh, he deserves that character. Also, him and his dad, the fact that they aren't related, like they are so similar. That's like the best pairing. But I thought it was a really good season. The whole TV programme just really talks about things that haven't been talked about in normal shows, normalises absolutely everything, and I just think it is one of the best TV shows of the past couple of years. So other kind of content I consumed, I've been watching so much YouTube. My favourite ones I'd say this month are Danielle Carolan. I've really been enjoying her moving to New York vlog. Along the same lines of Danielle Carolan, Brooke Mitchell, I've been loving her vlogs as always. I find her such a relatable content creator. I say relatable, she has just moved into like the dreamiest New York apartment. So that bit I don't find relatable, but relatable in kind of the topics she talks about. That is everything that I consumed in September. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did like it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Do make sure to go and follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and do let me know if there are any other videos that you'd like me to do. Goodbye.